Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Nishit Kumar, bringing glimpses of major developments of the day from across the globe. The headlines. India calls on SCO members to leverage their economic strength in the fight against COVID-19. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says China has brought bad deals and lawlessness to Sri Lanka. Over 70 million Americans vote in the presidential election, which could lead to the highest voter turnout in more than a century. After a gap of 8 months, air connectivity between Bangladesh and India resumes under the air bubble arrangement, and WHO says Europe's daily COVID-19 deaths rose by nearly 40% over the last week. Commerce and Industries Minister of India, Piyush Goyal, today chaired a meeting of foreign trade and economic ministers of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization countries. In his remarks, Mr. Goyal said that the SCO countries need to leverage their economic strength and explore partnerships that enhance trade and investment in the region. More from our Beijing correspondent in this report.
SCO countries collectively account for more than 14% of global goods trade and nearly 12% of world trade in commercial services. Mr. Goyal asked the SCO countries to enhance intra-SCO trade and investment in ensuring the speed of recovery from the aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic. All the sides adopted the documents on India's initiatives on multilateral trading system, response to COVID, intellectual property rights and MSMEs. Anshuman Mishra for World News, All India Radio, Beijing.
External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, said India and Central Asia share ancient historical and cultural linkages, and Central Asia is considered as India's extended neighborhood. He was addressing the second meeting of the India-Central Asia Dialogue organized by India virtually today. The meeting saw participation from foreign ministers of Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan and Afghanistan. The ministers of the Central Asian countries acknowledged India's humanitarian medical assistance to their countries in the fight against COVID-19 pandemic. They also welcomed the provision of $1 billion line of credit by India for priority developmental projects in fields such as connectivity, energy, IT, healthcare, education, agriculture, etc. They also welcome India's offer to provide grant assistance for implementation of high-impact community development projects for furthering socio-economic development in the countries of the region. In a joint statement, the ministers emphasized the importance of concerted efforts to further expand trade and economic cooperation and strongly condemn terrorism in all its forms. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said on Wednesday that China has brought bad deals and lawlessness to Sri Lanka. He made the latest attack on China after talks with Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa on security cooperation to keep vital Indian Ocean sea lanes just south of Sri Lanka open.
Indeed, a strong, sovereign Sri Lanka is a powerful and strategic partner for the United States on the world stage. It can be a beacon for a free and open Indo-Pacific. Look, that's quite a contrast to what China seeks. We see from bad deals, violations of sovereignty, and lawlessness on land and sea that the Chinese Communist Party is a predator.
Pompeo arrived in Sri Lanka from India as part of a 4-leg tour aimed at bolstering allies against China's increasing political and military inroads in the region in recent years. More than 70 million Americans have cast ballots in the U.S. presidential election. According to a latest tally from the U.S. Elections Project, it is more than half the total turnout of the 2016 election, with 1 week to go until election day. The tally shows a record-breaking pace that could lead to the highest voter turnout in percentage terms in more than a century. It is the latest sign of intense interest in the contest between Republican President Donald Trump and Democratic challenger Joe Biden. It also highlights voters' desire to reduce the risk of exposure to COVID-19 pandemic heading into winter. Michael McDonald, the professor in the University of Florida who administers the U.S. Election Project, has predicted a record U.S. voter turnout of about 150 million. It represents 65% of those eligible to vote, the highest rate since 1908. This is All India Radio giving you the world news. The air connectivity between Bangladesh and India resumed on Wednesday with 2 flights leaving Dhaka under the air bubble arrangement between the two countries. This would help in increasing the people-to-people contacts between the two countries. More from our Dhaka correspondent in this report.
The resumption of the air connectivity between Bangladesh and India through the special mechanism of air bubble arrangement has come as a big relief to people travelling between the two countries, especially by the people who needed urgent medical support in India. 2 flights of the US Bangla Airlines left the Hazrat Shah Jalal International Airport in Dhaka for Kolkata and Chennai today. The services will help in strengthening people-to-people contact between the two countries. The flights between two countries have resumed after nearly 8 months. The travel between India and Bangladesh was disrupted due to the outbreak of corona pandemic. Rajesh Jha, AIR News, Dhaka.
Meanwhile, international scheduled commercial passenger flights from India will remain suspended until 30th of November, except international cargo flights and passenger flights approved by the government. Britain has called on NATO allies to stand shoulder to shoulder on values of tolerance and free speech in a veiled rebuke to Turkey, which has been calling for a boycott of French goods. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan has urged Turks to stop buying French goods and has accused France of pursuing an anti-Islam agenda. Erdogan is one of the several leaders in the Muslim world angry with France over its response to the murder of teacher Samuel Paty, who showed pupils cartoons of Prophet Muhammad as part of a lesson on free speech. In another development, Turkey on Wednesday said it will take legal and diplomatic steps in response to a caricature of President Tayyip Erdogan in the French satirical weekly Charlie Hebdo. Meanwhile, India has strongly deplored the personal attacks in unacceptable language on President of France Emmanuel Macron. In a statement, External Affairs Ministry said India also condemned the brutal terrorist attack and that took the life of the French teacher. The ministry said there is no justification for terrorism for any reason or under any circumstance. The chief executives of 3 large tech companies, Facebook, Twitter, Google, will defend a law protecting tech platforms before U.S. Senate panel on Wednesday. The topic has split U.S. lawmakers on ways to hold big tech companies accountable for how they moderate content on their platforms. The 3 CEOs would speak in favor of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act that protects companies from liability over content posted by users and is crucial to free expression on the Internet. The hearing comes after President Donald Trump has repeatedly called for tech companies to be held accountable for allegedly stifling conservative voices. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden has also expressed support for revoking the law. Now, let us take a look at the coronavirus updates. According to WHO data, the number of infected cases has crossed 43.54 million worldwide. Europe's daily COVID deaths rose by nearly 40% compared to the previous week. WHO spokeswoman Dr. Margaret Harris said France, Spain, the UK, the Netherlands and Russia accounted for the majority of the cases. Meanwhile, India has achieved a significant milestone in its fight against COVID. The national recovery rate has reached 90.85%, with overall recovery of over 7.2 million patients so far. Health authorities in one of India's most populous states faced a big test on Wednesday as country's first state assembly elections in Bihar were held successfully since the novel coronavirus epidemic began. And now moving on to sports, US sprinter and world 100 meters champion Christian Coleman will miss next year's Tokyo Olympics after being banned for 2 years for breaching whereabouts rules. In cricket, India will be touring Australia for 3 ODIs, 3 T20s and 4 tests scheduled to be played between November 27th and January 19th. India will begin the title defence of the Border Gavaskar Trophy with the day-night test match in Adelaide from December 17th. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to Vaishnava Jan by artists from Nauru. And with that, we end this bulletin. See you at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.